if you're going to have a code of conduct, then I think you need to enforce it. And if you're not going to enforce it, then I think you owe people an explanation as to why you've chosen that course of action. And so far, we've had nothing from the Royal Society.
Royal Society, Britain's most well-respected scientific institution, will next month discuss whether to expel Elon Musk. The Tesla and SpaceX boss was made a fellow of the organisation in 2018 for his work on electric cars and space travel, but now more than 2,300 scientists have signed an open letter calling for his membership to be revoked. The letter was written by Stephen Curry, Emeritus Professor of Structural Biology at Imperial College London, and he joins me now. Stephen, good morning.
Good morning, Hugo.
Thanks very much.
Can I correct your introduction? My letter does not call for Elon Musk to be expelled from the Royal Society.
OK, correct me. What does it call for?
So it expresses dismay at the inaction and silence of the Royal Society over concerns that have been raised by the fellowship as much as 6 months ago. And yet they have decided to do nothing. There is clear evidence, I think, in the public domain that Elon Musk, who is a fellow of the Royal Society, has breached the code of conduct that the Society operates. And what the letter asks for is an explanation from the Royal Society as to why they have opted to do nothing in this case.
I mean, if they were to do something rather than nothing, what would that something be?
Well, that's up to them. But I think what's important to realise is the Royal Society is the Britain's National Academy of Science, and membership of the Royal Society is an honour that is bestowed on, the very greatest scientists of the UK and abroad. It does admit members from overseas. And when you are admitted and become a member of the Royal Society, that's a privilege that's conferred on you. And that privilege, according to the Code of Conduct, is predicated on adherence to particular standards of conduct. And those standards are laid out in the Code of Conduct. And that code has sort of requests that fellows strive for excellence, that they have a positive impact, that they always act with integrity, that they act with respect, and that they sort of seek to promote the aims of the society, which are to support excellence in science and to encourage the development and use of science for the benefit of society.
Okay.
And I think there is a case to be made and a case to be heard that some of Elon Musk's statements and actions fall foul of that code.
Well, I mean,
so what I don't understand is why the Royal Society has decided that no action is necessary.
I mean, again, just to pin this down, what action would be possible? If we're not talking about expelling him, what are we talking about?
Well, they do have a disciplinary code. So suspension permanently, so expulsion is one option. Temporary suspension is another option. But another option could be that they make a public statement that they are perhaps critical of some of the statements and actions that he's taken that fall foul of the code, and reiterate actually their commitment to the values that are included in the code, because it seems that they're ignoring their own code, and that's what I think is puzzling certainly me, and has puzzled the now more than 3,000 members of the scientific community here.
Is this about his politics, or is sorry, Stephen? Is this about?
No,
is this about?
It's not.
So precisely what is it about then, if not his politics?
So there are things that he has said and done. So he has sort of called for the prosecution of Anthony Fauci, who's head of the CDC in the United States and is also a fellow of the Royal Society. He hasn't given any reason or justification for calling that a very eminent scientist and public servant should be prosecuted. He is well known to be one of the most ardent promoters of misinformation on his platform X. That's hardly the actions of somebody who is striving towards the highest standards of science and scholarship, which demands respect for evidence and respect for the truth. And he's now also, of course, as head of the Department of Government Efficiency, involved in sort of actions which have led to very drastic and precipitate budget cuts, to federal funding of research, to immediate and summary sackings of staff working for federal research agencies. And he's also part of a an administration that's actually imposing censorship on the scientific community in America. There are certain words, such as female, such as equity, such as diversity, that you are not allowed to use. They've had to be scrubbed from web pages at NASA and other scientific establishments. And Elon Musk has not said anything to object to that, and yet that is fundamentally at odds with the Royal Society's own commitments to freedom of expression and to equity and diversity. They've done some very good work on this in recent years.
Okay, so a layman might assume that the point of the Royal Society was not about equity and diversity. It wasn't about what people say about other scientists, but was about scientific achievement. How would you measure Elon Musk in terms of scientific achievement? Because a lot of people would place him, whatever they think of his politics and his other comments, would place him quite highly on that scale.
Well, actually, what are his scientific achievements? I mean, he's done fantastic things in terms of engineering, but actually the Royal Society has a focus on science. There is also a Royal Academy of Engineering, and perhaps they might have been interested in honouring him. So I don't really actually, in the first instance, understand why the Royal Society chose to sort of honour him in this way. I mean, I think there's no doubt that he has done some spectacular things on the engineering front. To address the point on equity and diversity, those are really important, because actually if you want to strive for excellence and if you want institutions to be able to do the very best science, then you need to make sure that you are searching for talent in the widest and deepest pools. And we know that in our universities and in our research institutes, over many years, that has not been the case. We know that there is underrepresentation of women, of people from ethnic minority backgrounds, LGBT people and disabled researchers. And there's talent that has been excluded there, that has been overlooked. And a commitment to excellence is actually entirely consistent with a commitment to creating institutions that will welcome and nurture the talent of people, whatever their background.
I understand. I mean, some would say that with his work on satellites, with his work on electric cars, with his work on SpaceX, with his work on putting chips into brains, he must have surely inspired a lot of people to be more interested in science than they would have been otherwise. The kind of censure you're talking about, Stephen, has this ever been applied to anyone else in the past?
The Royal Society has not expelled, has expelled, I think, 2 people in the past. That is not something that they do very well or very often. And it's not censure, okay? As I come back, the point of the letter is that there are evident breaches of the code, and it is so far inexplicable to me and to many other people why the Royal Society has decided that actually the code doesn't seem to apply to Elon Musk. So it's about integrity, and it's, if you're going to have a code of conduct, then I think you need to enforce it. And if you're not going to enforce it, then I think you owe people an explanation as to why you've chosen that course of action. And so far, we've had nothing from the Royal Society. I agree with you. He has been an inspiring figure on those sort of technological fronts. I think the chips in brains thing is rather overstated. I'd like to see some published work on that. I don't think there is any yet. There are lots of sort of press releases and different claims, but there is actually some concern about actually the sort of research practices that have gone on at his Neuralink
Understood.
Company, which is working on that. And that's another one of the concerns that was raised by one of the fellows. And again, the code of conduct requires fellows to strive for excellence and act with integrity. And integrity really matters in science. If people
Finally, Stephen, and briefly, would I be right in thinking that nobody has been expelled from the Royal Society for more than 150 years?
I believe that's true, yes.
So if this were to happen to him, this would be basically calling him the worst member of the Royal Society in 150 years.
No, I don't think that's a good way to frame it. No,
okay.
there is a code of conduct.
I understand. I'm afraid we must leave it there. Stephen Curry, Emeritus Professor of Structural Biology at Imperial College London. Thank you very much indeed.